Welcome back, folks. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to start talking about secondary tillage. So everything that we've done up to this point has been aggressive fall forward tillage. Now we'll kind of switch gears a little bit to our spring tillage piece. This is the 5635 Field Cultivator. This has been around for many moons. We started out with the 5630 at one point, and that was probably 19 years ago, I suppose, about the time I started with the company. So, but it's been probably one of the most durable pieces that we make, but more importantly is the agronomics behind the machine, and I'll talk about that. So if you take a look at the design of it, we do have a floating hitch in it. So you see we've got the gauge wheels on the wings, we got the gauge wheel through the center. When you drop this down, this cylinder contracts and it basically releases the tongue from the tractor. So that means that we're basically carrying our weight on our front gauge wheels and our rear wheels. So as you go through a hilly ground, it's going to contour and follow the ground. And why is that important? Because if you think about a seeding environment, what happens if you're trying to seed in ground that's worked an inch, and ground that's worked 3 inches? Now technology today will help to overcome that in planters, but the more consistent that seed bed is, the better germination we're going to get, which is ultimately going to lead to yield. So the floating hitch is an integral part of that. And you notice when we lift and fold the machine, where's our gauge wheel at? It's off the ground. So it's not trailing behind the tractor that wants to take and sway that machine. So basically for transport, we're just on the walking tandems in the back. It's a 190 pound-point spring load. So you take a look at the industry, there are still some manufacturers at 150, some are still at 170, or moved to 170, upwards of 210, I think, is on the top side of the market. So at 190 pounds, what that's going to do, it's going to keep that shank engaged, because every time that shank comes up and cheats, again, what are we doing? We're inviting inconsistency into that seed bed. So it's got a very, very high poundage for that shank. We're on a 6-inch split the middle design, and so what that basically means is everything in front of the walking tandems, the 1, 2, 3, 4 ranks, we're almost doing 95% of our mixing just through the front of the machine. So when you get, as you walk towards the back of the machine, here's our split the middle. So we got 2 more ranks of shanks every other spacing. So basically we're 95% mixed. So we're actually doing a second mix through the back of the machine. More importantly is look at our clearance. We don't have really anything near tandems. So it's a very high residue machine, and with the placement behind the wheels, we're taking that subcompaction out that the wheels are creating. So very unique design. There's some other manufacturers that are doing that, but they're not necessarily on a 6-inch spacing. Most of them are wider than a 6-inch spacing. And you take a look at where their shank placement is, they got some shanks real close to those walking tandems. So that is really one of the big agronomics to this machine. Up by Jason's elbow is our depth control system. So it's a mechanical depth control, and all we're doing is we're basically taking shims in or taking shims out. So what's the advantage to mechanical depth control? What happens is that cylinder starts to leak. Well, with mechanical, the hydraulics are out of it. So we don't have to worry about a leaky cylinder that's going to take this machine down to its maximum depth. It's going to keep it at a consistent depth. The other thing with it is they're 1/4-inch increments as far as your depth goes, these shims. So each shim's about a 1/4 inch. So you're really going to have superb accuracy when it comes to the depth that you're working at. So if you're working at 3 inches, you want to go 3 1/4. Well, is that half a turn with the crank? Is that a full turn with the crank? No, it's a shim. Pull it in, put it out, depending on what you want to do with it. So very accurate, very easy system. I always say if you want to change depth, it's a good time to walk around the field color, make sure we don't have anything hanging out there, you know, hooked a big rock or You know, you got twine hanging off of it. So it's just a nice, simple system. We talked about the rear shanks design. We also have a three-row tine system, and it's a true three-row tine. So we're not dropping off tines behind the shanks for kind of a 2.5. We're calling a three-row tine harrow. With the 16-inch tines and the spacing on it, we're netting out at about 2.5-inch spacing. And I can tell you if that spacing is wrong, if Zach sets the machine up, he doesn't count his holes right, you'll see that because it's basically taking your shank marks out. And that's the nice thing with that 2.5-inch spacing. It takes all those shank marks out and lays a very nice finish with it. It is adjustable, parallel link system. So we got a pin adjust. We got in the middle setting to adjust it to be less aggressive. We can put in the back hole. If you're running in a high residue situation, we're starting to see build up here. It's kind of hotting and releasing. That's our first adjustment, is to take that back a notch. And you can see the difference in finish because it's not as aggressive as far as taking those shank marks out. But it's kind of a, you know, you just got to weigh the benefit versus the cost of that. And then we finish with our round bar reel. Again, it's got 80 pounds of down pressure on it, basically to give you a good, smooth, firm finish. It's always surprising what those crumblers will do. You know, you take a look at it, and we will probably be able to see it out here. Any space in between, you'll see maybe 1/2 inch to 2 inches of, I call it fluff, and it just kind of gives you an idea what that reel is doing. So it is actually doing more than what you think it is. That's basically, again, to prep that seed bed so you got a good firm surface to plant into. So, anything?
I like to talk about the construction of the machine just a little bit. When you start talking about secondary tillage, a soil finisher, a field cultivator, a lot of the competitors, they talk about weight and how heavy they are and how strong they are or whatever else. Our field cultivator is not the heaviest on the market, but it's really built. It's got a really strong design with this ladder frame. And you don't need it to be heavy. You need it to be strong enough to have a good backbone to allow for good consistent depth of cut forward and back. You want it to fall or to flow and follow the ground very well. And like Wade said earlier, you know, we've been making these field cultivators like this for a long time. Higher operating speeds, things like that. They just really hold up well. They're a really good product to have in the stable. They do an excellent job. So.
We're going to run this out in the field, and we'll get back when we're done.